Welcome, everyone, to the Gridiron Review Podcast. I'm Zach, that's Jack, and we are back for episode 8 of our Offseason in Review series. We're in the NFC North still, with the Minnesota Vikings this time, the second team in the division that will have a brand new coaching staff and front office. However, unlike the Bears, this team did not gut the roster and are bringing back a lot of familiar faces with a few key additions. How they look with these new additions and a new coaching staff against the rest of the division and NFL, stay tuned to find out.
On the offensive side of the football, their losses start in the running back room with Wayne Gallman, the receivers Chad Beebe and Dede Westbrook, Tyler Conklin and Chris Herndon in the tight end room, Mason Cole and Rashad Hill from the offensive line group. The only player they retained was Sean Mannion, and their key free agent pickups start with fullback Jake Vargas, Albert Wilson at receiver, Johnny Munt at tight end, Chris Reeves at guard, Austin Schlottman at guard, Jesse Davis at tackle. This is a pretty talented young offensive roster when you look at what they are when they're healthy. You have Dalvin Cook in the backfield, Alexander Madison in the backfield. You now add Ty Chandler in the 5th round of this year's draft. The only weakness on this team is tight end, and obviously we all know they have Thielen and Jefferson and KJ Osborne at receiver, and they added Jalen Naylor to that room in the 6th round. They also have Smith Marset from Iowa, who they drafted a couple years back. This offense has a lot of potential. Granted that someone like Cook can stay healthy, although the backup seems to be able to hold up the workload while he's gone. And Irv Smith is another one who just can't seem to stay healthy, nor has he proved to be that guy when he is healthy. And we hope that a guy like Kevin O'Connell can bring his system over to Minnesota and unlock a new level of Kirk Cousins and even Justin Jefferson. Cooper Kupp just won the Triple Crown. There's absolutely no reason as to why Justin Jefferson can't do the same thing. And I think for me, the issue is that it starts in the quarterback room with Kirk Cousins, who may actually be the most average quarterback of all time, as he has a career record of 59, 59, and 2. You don't get much more average than that. They've addressed pretty much everything. They addressed the line. They brought in Chris Reed, who played nice starter snaps in place of hurt Quentin Nelson last year in Indy. Jesse Davis was a nice piece for Miami on the line as a rotation guy. They drafted Ed Ingram in the 2nd round and Vidarian Lowe in the 6th round. In terms of weapons, all you did was add with Ty Chandler being the primary guy who we've loved since our first snap watching him at the East-West Shrine game. And if this starts to go downhill under Cousins, do you switch to a guy like Kellen Mond now that, grumpy old Mike Zimmer isn't in the building anymore? But for a team that has done such a nice job this offseason, bringing in a young head coach who is an offensive specialist and all the other pieces that they brought in, particularly defensively, but there's no reason that this team can't overthrow the Packers, who seem to be on a downhill slide with Rodgers still contemplating retirement, it sounds like. And it sounds like he'll be here for the year, but it sounds like he's always thinking about it. And a receiver room that already took a huge step back because of the loss of Devontae Adams and now Lazard not being at mandatory minicamp. And I just think that this team is going to be held back by, first off, injuries. There's way too many injury-prone guys on this team. And then what is Kirk Cousins going to do to take that next step? Because I feel like every year you hear Kirk for MVP, but if Russell Wilson, who's won a Super Bowl before, can't get a single MVP vote, what makes you think that Kirk Cousins is going to get one?
Yeah, and Cousins' average goes way beyond the record. That's just a really, really odd but good indicator. When you watch him, he shows flashes of being really good, and then he overthrows someone by a mile. Like, it just balances out. Can he bring you to the playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. Will he win you a Super Bowl? Probably not. They signed him to a 1-year extension, and I think that was just to buy time because this new coaching staff went in and they took a look at Kellen Mond, and they decided they were going to go with him over any of the quarterbacks in this draft, and most of them except Pickett, or all of them except Pickett, fell to the 3rd or later. So if they really had interest in one of these quarterbacks, they were there for the taking. But instead, they thought either they really hated this class or they felt like Mond offers enough to to bank on. Should Cousins falter, should he get hurt, should they be average? I mean, in our eyes, if you get to week, I'm trying to think now what they're saying, if you get to like week 15 and they're out of contention, you might see a Kellen Mond, because this team might decide we got to figure out what we're going to do next year. They should be in great position. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but to bring in a different veteran to start right away, if that's the way they decide to go. But for this season, they didn't lose. The biggest loss in our eyes on offense is probably Tyler Conklin. Irv Smith is hurt all the time, and Conklin was kind of like that do-it-all, great number 2 tight end that can fill in if needed as the number 1. Johnny Munt is primarily a blocker, but they did bring him over from the Rams, so it's possible, or at least theoretically, that he does take on a larger pass-catching role. Maybe he does fill a Conklin-type scenario where he is a good number 2, and then if asked upon, he can catch some passes here and there. But the Rams offense historically has not been a gold mine for tight end production, except for Higbee that 1 year. I mean, Higbee's a fine tight end, but in general, their money is in the 4 wide receiver sets. We have actually Justin Jefferson winning Offensive Player of the Year. We do think he's a serious Triple Crown candidate and could explode. I mean, he was doing this under Mike Zimmer, who is probably like the least friendly coach on showing your strengths and getting you production. But maybe O'Connell does unlock a better level of Cousins, or at least installs an offense that allows him to do better. But realistically, he'll have another Cousins type year. He might throw for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 10 to 12 interceptions. It's not a bad year by any means, but it's not an elite year. And you just feel like, to Jack's note, they can unseat the Packers. We don't have that happening. We'll go over the record in a little bit. The potential is certainly there. If Cousins does take a odd step forward at this age in his career, if Mond takes over at some point and ends up being a crazy good quarterback that makes Mike Zimmer look like an idiot, which would not be a shocker, this team could surprise and they could take the division for sure. We still have the Lions finishing over them, but between the two of them, the Packers are in danger 100%. As Jack noted, the offensive players on the Packers are struggling. Lazard, your only one that you can actually count on, is holding out, or is at least not at the mandatory camp. And the only reason we don't have the Vikings overtaking them is the Packers defense is really good still, but you can't say enough. The potential is there. O'Connell could have a crazy effect on this team. It's just something that you can't predict right now. However, on the defensive side, there was more turnover versus the offensive side. They retained Pat Pete, which is a big get for them because he had almost a mini revival, I would say, after he had kind of been trending down, but still good in Arizona. He seemed to step it up last year again, and they brought in they re-signed Ty Smith. They lost a lot on the defensive line. Tashawn Bauer, Sheldon Richardson, Everson Griffin, obviously everybody knows that's a whole situation. Jordan Scott, Eddie Yarbrough, Michael Pierce, and then at linebackers, they lost Nick Vigil, Anthony Barr. However, Barr is still a free agent, but with their other additions, I doubt he resigns with the Vikings. Tuff Borland, Mackenzie Alexander, and Xavier Woods, who was a big part of their secondary. In free agency, they patched up the defensive line with Harrison Phillips and Ty McGill. Phillips is a good find. Would he replace Sheldon Richardson and Michael Pierce? I don't know. He's fine. It's okay. As Jack notes in the summary, their depth is iffy. However, what is going to be very good is their outside pass rush. When to pair with Danielle Hunter, they went and got Zadarius Smith after he almost signed with the Ravens.
I think the contract was like nearly signed, and then he was like, "Nah, I'm out."
Yeah, and he ended up on the Vikings, forming what should be one of the better pass rushing duos in the league. They went and got Jordan Hicks to pair with Eric Kendricks while the young guys figure it out. I still believe in Chaz Surratt. I think he's just got more development than people expected. Recently converting from quarterback, I think, just for his senior season at Carolina, right?
2019. I know he led in tackles 2019, 2020, so it might have been his junior year, but
okay. Either way, he's still got some learning to do. I still believe in him. Maybe he's a lost cause. And then they also went and got Shannon Sullivan and Nate Hairston. On specials, they went and got Jordan Berry and Gabe
Brick.
I don't know how to say that last name. I'm not sure. Jack, they really hit heavy in the draft on the defensive side. Do you want to start with
Yeah.
that?
So it starts off at pick 12 when they got finessed by their own division. And, they traded back 20 picks with the Lions for basically a third round pick. So congrats to you. Great first move as your first draft class. But, they still got Lewis Cine at 32, and Cine was a borderline first round pick for me. So this was a nice little fit here. And to me, this goes a little bit further beyond just Cine's play. I think that he can play back, he can play in the box, and he's going to be able to do a little bit of both of that with Harrison Smith being able to do similar things. And I just think that the Vikings need to find a way to replace Harrison Smith in the future, as he's been the leader of that defense for the better part of 10 or 11 years now. And, Cine is a similar player, comes from a Georgia program that highly values character and values leadership. And I just think that's a perfect fit for him. In the second round, they then traded up. Well, they traded back with Green Bay, who took Christian Watson, and then they traded back up picks later for Andrew Booth, who people were raving about. And I've gone over this, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. His tape was not as good as people thought it was, but I think him getting to learn under a guy like Pat Pete, who has some all pros, some Pro Bowls under his belt, who was known for his athleticism, is a really strong situation for him. And I don't think that Booth is going to be this all rookie team type guy in his rookie year, but I think that he's a guy that, in a couple of years we could see being an above average corner, maybe pushing a little further, but he also has some injury concerns. So I, joined the group. Minnesota is really good at that. And then in the third round, Brian Asamoah. Zach told me on Twitter he's seeing mixed reviews about this. We don't like it. As Zach just talked about, we like Chaz Surratt. We think that there's some potential there, unless there's something going on that we just don't understand with his development. But Asamoah is not a guy that had phenomenal tape. People had him as a day 2 guy. I'm glad at the very least he went in the third round and not the second. He just kind of like a chaotic player, and at least he gets to sit on the bench right now. Who's going to be first off the bench, him or Surratt? I don't know, but for a team that needs a tight end, probably maybe another offensive lineman, some defensive lineman, even another starting corner, it's just a really questionable move after you went out and got Jordan Hicks as well. So it's not like any linebacker you drafted here was going to start. In the fourth, they took another corner, a Caleb Evans, an edge in the fifth, hometown kid, Odo Mayo. And, it's like Zach said, this defense should be able to take a step forward. In some ways, I think when you look at them, the first thing you have to notice is that they're changing their scheme from a base 4-3 to a base 3-4. And I think that kicking Danielle Hunter out to outside linebacker with his athleticism, if he can stay healthy, is a great move. And him and an aging Zadarius Smith, who still seems to have it, is going to be scary. And this secondary is not great, but it's a huge upgrade on what they had last year. My biggest worry here would be, can Harrison Phillips and this makeshift D-line hold up for the year?
Yeah, it feels like against the run on the line aspect, it could be an issue because Kendricks is one of the best linebackers in football. And Jordan Hicks, I keep seeing flirt between an average and above average linebacker. The thing about Asamoah is he's basically a safety size. He's like 220, right? And 6'1". So it's just kind of a weird, maybe he's brought on to be a sub package linebacker, but I don't think his coverage skills are even that good. And it's just kind of funny you talk about Zadarius still having it and Danielle Hunter. They're both fill the theme of the whole team of being injury prone. Zadarius coming up of a major back injury. Danielle Hunter having a neck surgery, I believe.
No, the neck was 2 years ago. Last year, I believe it was.
Was it a pec?
It might have been. Yeah, that sounds right.
Either way, these two guys are extremely talented and extremely injury prone. And that's the other reason why, like, we can't predict injuries, but this team has a roster full of question marks. I mean, Justin Jefferson is like the only guy, and I mean Cousins is durable, but Dalvin Cook or Smith, Adam Thielen, the offensive line, Za'Darius, Danielle, Hicks is hurt a decent amount. Like these, it's just an issue. Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith are getting older. It's just this whole roster. We think they're trending in the right direction. Getting rid of I don't care about no records. Mike Zimmer was a major step, and going with a young guy that learned, the Ram system that has worked so well is a very good choice. And we have them finishing third in the division at 6-11, taking a slight step back, but for the long run, they're in a much better position. You just have to trust that it's not going to be the easiest first season. But they could surprise, as we said over and over, if Cousins does take that step forward, if they manage to stay completely healthy, there's a good chance that they might get a couple more wins. They might finish on their standard 8-win season that they become so known for. Either way, we do really like the direction that they're trending in. It's just the results, besides Jefferson maybe exploding this season, might not show up right away. And Vikings fans just need to be patient. You've been mediocre for so long, besides the Minnesota Miracle, that it's just another season. And then the turnaround next year, if there's a new quarterback, if Cousins looks a lot better, if Munt looks like a future star, could be a lot better outlook come next season.
I would just say that, I mean, on top of, the injuries, and Zach's right, we didn't predict injuries, but it's a little different when it's inevitable. Like these guys are hurt every year. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But for a team that you read articles back in January talking about how Kendricks and Hunter and Cousins and all these guys are on the block, Thielen and whoever else, they did not have as bad of turnover as it may have sounded like months ago. And you look at someone like Chicago, who lost 33 players from their roster last year. Minnesota, I mean, I'm the super advocate for Kirk Cousins being an average quarterback, and I still think that you can't blow it up, because do you really want to be where Chicago is right now, who we have predicted at 1-16? Dan Campbell, when he went into Detroit, yeah, he let a lot of guys go, but he didn't completely blow it up. Yeah, he got rid of, Stafford, but he still got Goff. And some people might laugh at me for saying that, but I really don't think Goff is that bad. I'd probably take Goff over Cousins. I'd have to do a little more research into that. But the point is, you are now closer to overthrowing the Packers because you didn't blow it up. And I think that next year we could see the Lions and the Vikings fighting for the division. Whereas, if you did blow it up, now you're fighting with Chicago for the first overall pick.
Definitely agree on that one. That concludes our Minnesota Vikings episode. We'll be closing out the North with the Packers tomorrow. See you there.